In the world of monumental ice sculpting and cryogenic engineering, your greatest, most ruthless enemy is thermodynamics. People think ice is just frozen water. They think you just carve a swan, put it in a cold room, and hope it doesn't melt before the party ends. But when you are building a 40-foot-tall architectural structure entirely out of ice, intended to be displayed in a room temperature environment, you are fighting a biological war against the laws of physics. To make ice survive where it shouldn't, you have to become a master of enthalpy and phase transitions. You have to weave microscopic capillary tubes throughout the core of the ice, constantly pumping liquid nitrogen through a proprietary closed-loop compressor system to fight off the ambient heat. A single miscalculation in the coolant pressure, a 1-degree fluctuation in the microprocessor, and your masterpiece doesn't just drip. The structural integrity collapses and tens of thousands of pounds of ice shatter. I spent my entire career learning how to maintain perfect freezing stability in the most volatile environments. I just never realized that the most unstable, rapidly melting foundation in my life was my own marriage. My name is Kale. I'm 37 years old, and I am a lead cryogenic engineer and master ice architect. 5 years ago, I married Sloan. Sloan was a high-powered, fiercely ambitious VIP event producer for the luxury resort industry. She thrived in the glamorous, champagne-fueled, hyper-aggressive world of Las Vegas and Dubai mega-resorts. She loved the sun, the red carpets, and the billionaires. I was the quiet, introverted scientist who spent 14 hours a day locked inside a -20-degree freezer, smelling like ozone and wearing 3 layers of thermal coats. We were complete opposites, but I thought we were the perfect ecosystem. I built the impossible structures, and she sold the spectacle to the richest people on Earth. For 4 agonizing years, I poured every ounce of my personal savings, my sanity, and my genius into my absolute magnum opus. I called it the permafrost matrix. It wasn't just a sculpture, it was a technological revolution. It was a 40-foot-tall, intricately carved obelisk of optically flawless ice that housed a proprietary, self-regulating micro-refrigeration system. Because of my algorithms, the sculpture could stand indefinitely in a 90-degree room without dripping a single drop of water. It was the absolute holy grail for desert mega-resorts. Independent engineering firms evaluated the patents for the closed-loop cooling system at roughly $15 million. I promised Sloan this technology was our golden ticket. I told her that when we licensed the hardware, we would build our own boutique production firm, and she would be the undisputed queen of luxury events. We would be set for life. But Sloan didn't want to build an empire from the freezer. She looked at my frostbitten hands and my exhausted eyes, and she decided she wanted the $15 million without having to share the stage with the ice chipper. And she found a corporate shark who was more than willing to help her steal the winter.
The structural integrity of our marriage started to fracture when Sloan's agency was contracted by a massive global casino and resort syndicate. The CEO of that syndicate was a man named Sterling. Sterling was 45 years old and the absolute poster boy for corporate arrogance. He didn't know the first thing about engineering, architecture, or art. He was a ruthless venture capitalist who bought up massive plots of desert land, poured billions of dollars into building gaudy, neon-lit mega casinos, and presented himself to the world as a visionary pioneer. He wore custom linen suits, flew a private helicopter directly to his penthouses, and treated brilliant working-class engineers like disposable, ignorant peasants. Suddenly, Sloan was spending all of her time at Sterling's Glass Tower headquarters in Las Vegas, claiming she was restructuring his global launch strategy for a new desert oasis resort. The red flags didn't just quietly appear, they sounded like a pressure alarm in a liquid nitrogen tank. First, the profound, unapologetic disrespect. Sloan started actively belittling my life's work. "Kale, you need to wake up," she scoffed one evening, tossing her $5,000 designer handbag onto my pristine drafting table. Sterling manages a billion-dollar hospitality portfolio. He controls the culture of the Strip. You're just a guy sitting in a giant refrigerator chipping away at frozen water. You lack corporate vision. Nobody cares about your thermal physics. They care about the VIP bottle service next to it. Second, the intense, unnatural secrecy regarding her devices. Sloan changed the passcode on her phone and her iPad. She started taking crisis logistics calls in her car, sitting in the driveway with the engine running for 40 minutes before coming inside. Third, and by far the most terrifying, was her sudden, highly specific interest in my laboratory's transport logistics. Sloan, a woman who absolutely loathed the freezing temperatures of my workspace, suddenly asked me exactly how the massive ice structure was transported and if the proprietary cooling software was stored on an encrypted flash drive or accessible via the cloud. When an event producer suddenly cares about the physical location of unpatented multi-million-dollar thermodynamic source code, you don't answer the question, you check the system for a leak.
When you build proprietary technology that prevents 40,000 pounds of ice from collapsing, you don't rely on a standard Wi-Fi password. My entire laboratory was routed through a custom telemetry mainframe. It monitored temperature, humidity, and atmospheric pressure. But to ensure absolute security, the system also logged every single byte of data moving across the local network. One Saturday night, while Sloan was supposedly at a weekend VIP retreat in the city, my phone vibrated with a critical priority alert from the lab. Someone was actively attempting to execute a mass file transfer from my secure development server to an unauthorized external cloud locker. I didn't storm down the hall and kick the door open. I simply isolated the connection, artificially slowed the transfer speed to a crawl to buy myself time, and mirrored her laptop screen directly to my monitors. She had her encrypted messaging app open, communicating directly with Sterling. I didn't just find an affair. I found a premeditated multi-million-dollar corporate heist. Sterling wrote, "My chief engineers just reviewed the compressed thermal simulation code you sneaked out last week. They are completely losing their minds. The microcapillary cooling logic is 10 years ahead of anything our HVAC guys have seen. If we install this ice obelisk in the center of my new desert resort for the grand opening next week, the investors will crown me a genius. Have you secured the master source code and the physical sculpture yet?" Sloan replied, her words dripping with a casual, horrifying cruelty that made the blood freeze in my veins. "I'm copying the master repository from his server right now. The idiot actually thinks I care about his stupid ice cubes. Tomorrow, when he goes to his cryogenic symposium in Chicago, I'll hire a heavy transport crew with a massive freezer truck to load the sculpture. We'll tell him the power grid failed in the lab and the entire piece melted down the drain. He'll be completely devastated, but he won't be able to prove a thing. We launch in Vegas, I'll serve him with divorce papers, and we'll be set for life. He's just a naive ice chipper, Sterling. He won't be able to fight your corporate lawyers." Sterling responded, "You're a visionary, my love. The ice chipper is going to fund our entire empire." I sat alone in the dark, sweltering server room, staring at the glowing monitor as my entire reality shattered. My wife of 5 years was sleeping with a corporate parasite. Together, they were actively plotting to steal 4 years of my blood, sweat, and genius, intentionally hijack my masterpiece, launch it on the biggest stage in the world, and leave me utterly destroyed, believing my life's work had melted down the drain. They thought I was just a naive ice chipper. They didn't understand the level of absolute, unmitigated thermodynamic destruction a master cryogenic engineer is capable of coding. If you want to destroy a fraudulent resort tycoon, you don't smash his windows. You let him steal your masterpiece. You let him install it in the middle of a billion-dollar luxury venue. You let him invite the wealthiest billionaires on Earth inside. And then you quietly turn up the heat. I didn't confront her. If I yelled and locked the server, Sterling's army of corporate lawyers would bury me in injunctions, claim they had a verbal contract to the design, and tie me up in court for a decade until I went bankrupt. I needed them to steal the sculpture. I needed Sterling to proudly stand in front of thousands of investors and take credit for my machine. So, I went to work on the firmware. To Sterling's highly paid, arrogant HVAC engineers, the cloned code I left on the server would look absolutely flawless. When they ran digital simulations, it would perform beautifully. When they plugged the sculpture into the power grid in Las Vegas, the liquid nitrogen would flow and the 40-foot ice obelisk would remain perfectly frozen, even in a crowded, hot room. But deeply embedded in the absolute foundational math of the compressor's thermal equilibrium protocol, buried so deep in the hex code that no QA tester on Earth would ever find it, I wrote a logic bomb. I knew Sterling's massive ego. I knew that at the climax of his grand opening speech, he would press a button to activate the spectacular, high-intensity LED light show embedded in the base of the sculpture to illuminate the ice from within. I coded the refrigeration logic so that when the motherboard received that specific LED activation signal, the payload would execute. It wouldn't just shut the compressor off,
it would violently invert the bypass valves. Instead of pumping ultra-cold liquid nitrogen through the microscopic capillaries inside the ice, the compressor would violently pull ambient hot air from the room, superheated, and pump boiling gas directly into the core of the 40-foot structure. The ice wouldn't just melt slowly. It would suffer catastrophic thermal shock. It would flash melt from the inside out in a matter of seconds, instantly destroying the structural integrity and dropping 40,000 pounds of freezing water and slush directly onto the floor. And as a final touch, I routed the base's internal audio speakers, meant to play ambient music, to hijack the local network and broadcast the audio file of Sloan and Sterling's WhatsApp conversation on a continuous loop. I finalized the patch. I packed my bags for the convention in Chicago. I kissed Sloan goodbye. "Have a great trip, Kale," she smiled, handing me my coffee. "Take care of the lab, Sloan," I replied, looking her dead in the eyes. "I'll guard it with my life," she promised. I drove away. I let her bring the thieves into my sanctuary. I let them steal the bomb. Now, they just had to turn on the lights.
I didn't stay in Chicago for the symposium. I went straight to the offices of the most aggressive, ruthless intellectual property and corporate fraud litigator in the Midwest. I sat down at his mahogany conference table. I handed him my original time-stamped code logs, the high-definition security footage, and the crystal-clear iCloud transcripts of Sloan and Sterling explicitly conspiring to steal the files and fake a power outage in my lab. And finally, I handed him the official, federally approved patent documentation for the permafrost cooling system, which I had secretly expedited and secured exclusively in my own name a month prior. My wife and her accomplice are going to illegally utilize stolen, patented thermodynamic hardware as the centerpiece of a multi-billion-dollar resort opening in Las Vegas this Saturday, I told my lawyer calmly. My lawyer reviewed the documents, read the chat logs, and slowly smiled like a shark smelling blood in the water. Kale, utilizing stolen, patented engineering hardware to solicit hundreds of millions of dollars from international investors is massive, willful federal fraud. If he presents this to boost his corporate valuation, we won't just sue him. The SEC will literally liquidate his entire hospitality empire. Draft the paperwork, I said, but do not file the injunction yet. Do not stop the opening. Let him install the sculpture. I want him to put his face on it in front of the whole world. On Wednesday afternoon, my phone notified me that my lab doors had been breached. Through the hidden cameras, I watched Sterling's logistics team illegally load my $1 million sculpture into a massive freezer truck. Sloan then walked over to the main breaker box and intentionally smashed it with a hammer, killing the power to the lab to fake the accident. She left a white envelope containing divorce papers on my desk and walked out without looking back. They were laughing. They thought they had just executed the perfect untouchable heist, but they had no idea they had just installed a ticking thermal bomb in their own living room.
Saturday night, live from Las Vegas, the undisputed center of global entertainment. I sat in my dark hotel room, watching the high-definition global broadcast on my monitors. The live stream had over 3 million viewers. Sterling was hyping up the crowd, pacing back and forth across the pristine marble floor of the massive indoor atrium, absolutely dripping with unearned confidence. The camera panned to the VIP section, and I saw Sloan standing there, holding the glass of champagne, looking incredibly proud, believing she had just secured a billion-dollar empire. The 40-foot ice obelisk stood behind Sterling, looking majestic and completely defiant of the 80-degree room. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sterling announced into his microphone, his voice oozing with arrogance, "tonight we don't just open a resort, we defy the laws of nature. Thanks to my brilliant engineering team, I present a monument that will never fade." The crowd went absolutely wild. "And now, to bring this masterpiece to life," Sterling grinned, holding up a remote control. "Let there be light." He pressed the button. The LEDs inside the base flared to life. I looked at the screen. I knew the thermodynamics. My logic bomb executed. In a fraction of a millisecond, the microcompressor forcefully inverted the bypass valves. Instead of liquid nitrogen, boiling hot, super-pressurized gas violently blasted through the thousands of microcapillaries inside the 40-foot core. On the live global broadcast, right in front of the most elite crowd on Earth, the magic violently died. A loud, terrifying, cracking sound, like a rifle shot,
echoed through the massive atrium as the internal temperature of the ice skyrocketed. Sterling stopped smiling. He looked back at the sculpture. The ice didn't just drip, it suffered catastrophic thermal shock. In a matter of seconds, massive spider-webbing cracks exploded across the flawless surface. Then, structural integrity failed completely. With a deafening roar, the entire 40-foot, 40,000-pound tower of ice violently shattered and flash melted. It collapsed outward in a spectacular avalanche of heavy, sharp ice chunks and a massive, rushing tidal wave of freezing slush and water. Thousands of gallons of water violently blasted across the pristine marble floors. The tidal wave hit Sterling square in the back, violently knocking him off the podium and sending him sliding face first across the wet marble, completely soaking his custom suit. The VIP crowd screamed in sheer, unadulterated horror, scrambling backwards, lifting their expensive dresses, and slipping in the rapidly expanding indoor flood. The entire atrium was instantly transformed into a chaotic, freezing swamp. "What the hell is happening?" Sterling shrieked, scrambling to his knees in the freezing slush, totally unhinged, looking around the room in absolute panic. Then, the base's internal speakers kicked in at 120 decibels. Instead of ambient music, the massive speakers blasted the raw audio file of Sloan and Sterling's conversation across the entire flooded atrium. Sloan's voice boomed like thunder. "We'll tell him the power grid failed. He's just a naive ice chipper, Sterling. He won't be able to fight your corporate lawyers." Sterling's voice echoed back, completely undeniable. "You're a visionary, my love. The ice chipper is going to fund our entire empire." In the VIP box, Sloan dropped her champagne glass. It shattered in the freezing water. She put her hands over her mouth, her face turning the color of wet concrete, staring at the ruined, melting obelisk in pure horror. The elite investors in the crowd stared at her in absolute disgust. The live stream chat completely broke. 3 million people had just watched a CEO turn a multi-billion-dollar resort into an indoor swimming pool and confess to corporate theft on live television. I took a slow, deeply satisfying sip of my coffee, smiled at the chaotic, flooded live stream, and texted my lawyer, "Melt them down."
You cannot unflood a billion-dollar mega resort on live television. The fallout was an absolute, unmitigated, scorched earth massacre. The video of the flash-melting ice and the audio confession went viral globally within 10 minutes. By Sunday morning, Sterling was the biggest laughingstock in the history of the hospitality industry. The wealthy investors who had funded the resort immediately pulled their money and filed massive lawsuits against him for gross negligence, fraud, and destroying millions of dollars in property with the water damage. But the real fatal blow came from the authorities. Because Sterling had utilized stolen, patented hardware to solicit hundreds of millions of dollars from investors, the SEC launched an immediate investigation. His resort empire completely collapsed. His bank accounts were frozen, he was ousted as CEO, and he was indicted for massive corporate fraud, facing a decade in federal prison. Sloan's life was vaporized. Sterling, realizing he was facing total ruin, immediately blamed her. He told investigators that she was a rogue event producer who had supplied him with the stolen, malicious technology without his knowledge. He threw her to the wolves to save himself. She called me from a flooded hotel room in Vegas, sobbing so hard she was hyperventilating. Kale, please, the investors are suing me. Sterling dumped me. The sculpture exploded into water. You have to tell them you made a mistake with the compressor. Please, I have nothing." "I didn't make a mistake, Sloan," I said calmly, leaning back in my chair. "I gave you exactly what you stole. You just forgot to check the bypass valves. I heard your audio file, by the way. Check your email. You've been served with a federal IP lawsuit. Enjoy the flood." I hung up and blocked her number. During our divorce settlement, she had absolutely zero leverage. Because she was facing criminal charges for corporate espionage and property damage against me, the judge awarded me 100% of the marital assets and denied her any alimony. She walked away with millions in legal debt and a felony record. It's been almost 3 years since that catastrophic grand opening in Las Vegas. After the dust finally settled and the lawsuits were paid out, I licensed the real, fully functioning, flawless source code for the permafrost matrix. I didn't sell it to a flashy casino developer. I sold the exclusive rights to a legendary, highly respected global architectural firm, a company that actually understands thermodynamics, respects the physics, and treats its creators like true partners.
I made enough money from that single contract to buy my own massive commercial testing facility, hire a full team of engineers, and my business has never been better. Last I heard, Sloan avoided a long prison sentence by taking a plea deal, but she is completely blacklisted from the luxury event and PR industries globally. She is currently working at a budget ice skating rink in a suburban mall, handing out rental skates, knowing every single day that she voluntarily threw away her golden ticket to the absolute top of the industry. Sterling, completely bankrupt and ruined, is currently serving a 7-year sentence for massive securities fraud. He has no mega resorts, no bespoke suits, and definitely no ice sculptures. If there is a lesson to be learned here, it's a simple one. Never try to hijack a system if you don't know the architect who controls the thermostat. If your partner thinks they can steal your hard work, push you into the shadows, and take the spotlight for themselves, don't try to pull the plug. Don't fight them for the server. Smile, hand them the hardware, let them wire up their massive glass castle, and let them confidently invite the whole world inside. And right when they think they've conquered the elements, just flip the switch and watch their entire fake reality melt away. Thanks for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this one, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments, what's the most embarrassing technological failure you've ever witnessed? Stay sharp, trust the math, and always check the pressure valves.